Hey, today I want to take a moment here to talk about two things. One is stand-up comedy, and the other is racism. You know, I kind of find those things at the different ends of a scale here because I love stand-up comedy and not a big fan of racism. Just discrimination in general, I'm not a big fan of. And the reason I want to talk about it is someone sent me a message today, an email asking me, would I comment on what Dave Chappelle said about guns in his special? And I've just watched his special recently. And he wanted to know, did it offend me? You know, because there's a big controversy about the stuff he said in that special was very offensive. And I will honestly say I wasn't offended by any of it. He was anti-gun in it. He said some stuff that I guess transsexuals were offended by, or at least people were offended for them. I haven't really met any that were offended. Gays, apparently, although, like I said, I think that was more people being offended for them than gays being actually offended. Same thing, transsexuals, etc. I watched it. I wasn't offended by any of it, especially not the gun stuff. It's like the transsexual stuff where he said he finds people that are transsexual confusing. I find them confusing. I have an advanced degree in psychology. I find the whole thing confusing. It's a very complex thing. It's not a simple thing. And I just don't understand a lot of it because I don't experience it. And you can't understand something truly unless you experience it. He didn't say they were confused. If he said they were confused, that would be offensive. He just said they're confusing, and I kind of agree with that. Now, does that mean that me not understanding it somehow invalidates it? No, I don't understand lots of things. It doesn't mean they're not valid. It just means I don't understand them or I'm ignorant. And admitting ignorance is not a problem. That's basically what he did. He admitted ignorance. I have no problem with people that are transsexual. I know it's a very complex thing, and I don't pity them either. I don't have any pity for people that are transsexual. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I just don't see anything to pity about them. Now, I do feel bad about the prejudices they face, the treatment they face, etc. But as far as them as persons, I'm like, live your own life. Be your own person. Be happy. That's all I care about that. That's what I want for every person. I don't feel like there's anything about them that I should pity. Unless, of course, they're not being able to live their life happily because of what other people are doing. But the ones that do their own thing and are happy, more power to them. So, got no problem with it, and I didn't see where what he said was offensive. But moving on to what I'm really supposed to be talking about here is what he said about guns. Didn't bother me, because what he did is he said one line in there that a lot of people thought was weird. He said that, this is an election year, so every adult eligible black person in this country needs to go out and register for a legal firearm. Now, he was making a joke because he's not pro-gun. He believes in gun bans, blah, blah, blah. He's anti-gun person, which I could actually respect someone being anti-gun. I don't have to agree with them. And I can be disgusted by the fact that they support something that is so unconstitutional and so anti-American. But like I say, this is America, so everyone has a right to be wrong or be a dick or a jackass or whatever. So I have to respect their right to be a wrong asshole. So I'm not even really got a problem with that. And plus, it was humor. You don't get upset too much at humor. When someone says something in a way to try to elicit a humorous reaction or for people to find it funny, I don't really take it all that seriously. But with that one statement, which you might say, well, that's a weird statement to make if you're anti-gun, he actually pointed out one very important thing. That all gun laws are racist. Because he said if every black person went out and applied for a gun permit, then immediately the government would outlaw guns. And that's just him pointing out that gun laws in general are racist. Their entire basis is in racism. And if you don't believe me, just do some research. As far back as Dred Scott, when the Dred Scott case was being argued, when they were saying freed blacks aren't citizens, well, the reason the Supreme Court, one of the reasons they made that decision was, and this is another thing that a lot of people say, the Supreme Court had never upheld that the Second Amendment is an individual right until Heller. No, that's wrong. In Dred Scott, they admitted it was an individual right way back in the 1800s because they said if black citizens or black men become citizens when they're freed, black men, black women, mostly men back then because men are the ones with rights back then. If a black man became a citizen when he was freed, well, since our U.S. Constitution guarantees every individual citizen the right to carry whatever firearm or whatever weapon they want, wherever they want to carry it, well, then if black people were citizens, they'd be able to do that too. Therefore, we can't let them be citizens. That was their reasoning. That was one of the main legs of their case and their decision. So that's blatant racism right there. Some of the earliest reasons why they didn't want to give slaves rights was because they didn't want slaves having guns. They didn't want black people having guns. And they admitted that the Constitution gives everyone the individual right to do that. And then when you move on, like when Texas immediately just suddenly reversed their opinions on everybody being able to keep weapons and carry weapons, etc. They did so, they cited that was because of an influx of minorities into the state. Blatant racism there. There's no way that isn't racism. When Ohio started passing anti-gun laws and requiring permits, etc. The reason they did so, and the reason they even admitted that they had to pass these laws, was because of an influx of freed slaves coming into the state to work in industry inside the state. Racist gun laws. When the South started passing gun laws, they did so to discriminate against the freed slaves. They didn't want them to have weapons. In fact, the very first ever carry permits or registration to own a firearm was only for blacks. They had to register if they wanted to carry a rifle, a Bowie knife, whatever. And then when the law changed to where they could no longer say that black men must do this, they took that out. They took out the racist part and just kind of with a wink and a nod understood, but we're only going to enforce this law like we have always against black people. When Ronald Reagan passed all kinds of anti-gun laws when he was governor of California and then supported them when he was president, which I've never understood why people deify this guy. He's anti-gun. He pretty much handed the country over to big business, and he's a racist also. I don't understand why the right deifies this guy so much. But the reason he passed all those anti-gun laws and the reason he supported like assault weapons bans, etc., was because he was a big old racist. He didn't like the Black Panthers having guns. He didn't like black people having guns. And there were too many black people in California that were getting guns, and he didn't like it. So he passed those racist supported laws there. Racist-backed laws, I guess I should say. They were spurred on by his racism. So gun control has never been anything but race-based, based on race. They've never been about the guns themselves. They've just been about keeping minorities from having guns. So gun laws, they're just horrible in themselves because they're anti-constitution, but they are one of the few remnants of blatant racism in this country that still remains from our past that people wholeheartedly support. And even the gun laws we pass today, who do they affect more? Minorities, low-income people, black people. That's who they affect more. Who do police arrest more? Minorities, poor people, black people. They're the ones they choose to enforce these laws against. And I know I've been rambling here, but the basis, to make a long story short, which is too late for that already, of what I'm saying here today, what I'm stumbling through, is that I wasn't offended by what Dave Chappelle said because it's comedy. I understand his position, and I think he made a great point about how gun laws are racist. And the only way they ever will get guns banned is if all black people have guns, because that's what the laws are for. They're to keep black people, minorities, poor people, etc. from having guns. So I think he made a great point. And I think nowadays, if you're someone that doesn't do your research and realize how racist gun laws are, and you still support them, well, like I said, you're supporting one of the last vestiges of institutionalized racism that still exists in this country, and you're doing so for all the wrong reasons. So I urge everyone out there, if you are pro any type of gun regulation whatsoever, do some research. See why that stuff's in place. See that it's nothing about stopping crime. It's not about making people safe. What it is, it's about marginalizing certain groups of people. It's about making sure minorities, poors, blacks, etc. don't have the means to defend themselves.
to the lady at 46 South Rose. 46 South Rose.
Station one call, retone that please. 10-4. Got the phone to go to that location. This is 19, is that correct?
Sorry, what?